Well, I think that one of the fundamental problems that we have as modern Westerners looking at this stuff is we have an inversion of the timeline of history. When we look at the timeline of history, we generally view our antecedents as like cavemen.
Yes.
That these are very ignorant people. They're basically, chimpanzees with better brains. And as we progress through the timeline of history, we're becoming increasingly more intelligent, increasingly more capable of building and of building these monuments and technology and so forth. So we see ourselves as the pinnacle of the human species. Like, we're the smartest, we're the greatest. That's not the way that the ancients viewed the antediluvian world. That's not the way that they viewed their antecedents. They see for them it was the inverse. For them, they were always trying to recover the glory of the people that had come before them, the majesty of the civilization that had come before them. So when they look back down the timeline of history, they're the dummies. And the further you go back, the more extraordinary people are.
Because they were closer to it, right? And they all have a myth of the flood.
Yes,
all of
and
them.
of the antediluvian world in general.
And they lived in a timeline that was closer to that and more accepted, because they probably had a knowledge, an understanding, at least the earliest ones, that they didn't make this. And so they probably passed that down.
Yeah, well, I think they inherited traditions from their ancestors about these things. You have this idea of a golden age among the ancients. The golden age meaning there was a time on Earth. The Greeks coined that particular phrase, the golden age. The ancient Egyptians called it Zeptepi, the first time. There was a time on Earth when the gods descended to the earth and cohabited with human species, and to some extent commingled with the human species. And that it was during this time that knowledge was transferred and that great cities were built. This is where the myth of Atlantis falls into this category. And then their world was suddenly and catastrophically destroyed. And what we've been doing since that destruction, in the mind of the ancients, what they've been doing since that destruction was attempting to rebuild, to rediscover the lost knowledge from that age, to recover it and to try and emulate their superior ancestors. That's what you see everywhere around the world. Doesn't matter if you're in Egypt or if you're in Peru. You see the same sort of thing. The same thing applies, by the way, for the megaliths in Peru. I don't know if have you been to Peru?
No.
Some of the most astounding megaliths that you'll see anywhere in the world. I referenced earlier the walls of Sacsayhuaman, absolutely phenomenal Cyclopean architecture. And of course, the construction of those walls is attributed to the Inca. So if you ask archaeologists in Peru who built Sacsayhuaman, who built Machu Picchu, who built Ollantaytambo, it's always going to be the same answer, the Inca. The Inca built it. Now, the problem is there's no record of the Inca building those walls. And if you ask the ancient Quechua people, if you ask the Quechua people, the Quechua people who continue in their ancient traditions, the ones who are there today, and they still wear their typical vestments and they still speak Quechua. If you talk to them and you ask them who built the walls of Sacsayhuaman, specifically Sacsayhuaman, they'll tell you a race of giants. This goes back to those, our progenitors, the giants. The giants built Sacsayhuaman. If you go up to Titicaca, Lake Titicaca, and you ask the Aymara people who built Tiwanaku, which is on the other side of Lake Titicaca in Bolivia, who built those megalithic edifices? The giants, our progenitors. That's what they'll tell you. So, and I don't necessarily think that giants built all this stuff. I don't necessarily think that at all. I just think that everyone is acknowledging that something extraordinary happened in the past, that our antecedents were much more impressive than we've given them credit for. I mean our antediluvian antecedents. And that in many cases, like you said, there's no inscriptions on megalithic stuff anywhere. You go to Machu Picchu, And it's apparent that in Sacsayhuaman, Machu Picchu, Ollantaytambo, and other places in Peru, it's apparent that the Incas certainly built on top. And they took advantage of these megalithic foundations, right? Anyone would. I mean, if you're going to build an edifice, you would use the superior foundations here, massive stones, and you'd build on top. And you try to emulate that style of building because it's anti-seismic for one thing. So in Machu Picchu, it's evident to me, and I think anybody who walks around that complex, you can see, and we have to keep in mind that much of Machu Picchu today is a reconstruction. It's an archaeological reconstruction, except for the foundations. We have pictures from Hiram Bingham, original pictures in black and white of what Machu Picchu looked like when he discovered it, accidentally. And what's there? The megalithic foundations are there. That's what's there, the megalithic foundations. And you see, and the Inca built on top of those foundations. And that's what a lot of the archaeological reconstruction today reflects. So if you walk around in Machu Picchu, I remember I've been there several times filming and doing different things. And I remember one time I was with my colleague Anselm P. Rambla, and we had a guide with us. And he was an older gentleman, very, very knowledgeable. And he was one of their official guides in Machu Picchu. And we're walking around, and he's telling us different things about the Inca and how they did certain things. And certainly the Inca built a lot up there. There's no question about it. The Inca were impressive. I'm not taking anything away from the Inca. But if you look at some of the edifices at Machu Picchu, you can see these magnificent megalithic foundations, big stones, polygonal, fit together so tightly you couldn't pass a butter knife between the joints. And then you have on top, what sometimes people describe as Inca slop on top, where it's like they're kind of trying to match the style of below, but it's not as precise, it's not as fine. And you can see the clear delineation between the megalithic and then what the Inca are doing, and then also the archaeological reconstruction. And I remember asking this guide of ours, I pointed across the courtyard to this exquisite polygonal foundational wall with just sort of crude Inca stuff on top. And I said, why are there two different styles here? Why do you see these large megalithic blocks fit together so precisely, and then you have this other style? And, keeping in mind the archaeological reconstruction, but there was enough of the site there that they could model what they did based on what the Inca had done. And he said, because they liked the way it looked. That was the answer. They liked the way it looked. And I said, you can't really believe that. I mean, you're not an idiot, right? They didn't do that because they liked the way it looked. The reason why there's an inferior mode of building on top of those megalithic foundations is because they didn't know how to do that. They did the best they could, and they were very good, right, at attempting to adopt the Cyclopean style. They were good, the Inca. But the only reason you would do that, the only reason you would put inferior architecture on top of superior foundations is because you don't know how to do that.
Yeah, well, it's also just the sheer size of these blocks. It just gives you so many questions because it's not like you could recreate that with whatever the Inca had. That's what's confusing. In order to move those stones into position and then put them and construct them in a way that it appears like they've been melted into place.
Yeah.
You're like, how? How are you moving them? How are you placing them? What do you use?
You should go to Ollantaytambo. Okay, so you go to Ollantaytambo, which is in between Cusco and Machu Picchu. You have to go to Ollantaytambo to get on the train to go up to Machu Picchu. It's the only way to get there. And Ollantaytambo has some of the most exquisite megalithic architecture on planet Earth. It is so beautiful the way that they were able to, and it's large megalithic blocks, and there's two different styles represented there. You have the polygonal, like at the walls of Sacsayhuaman in Peru, and then you have the interlocking blocks, like at Tiwanaku. Both of those styles are there. And there's this one spot at Ollantaytambo that I love to take people to because you're going up the stairs, and the wall curves. As you're going up the stairs, the wall curves. Now, if you and I were building a wall today, even if we were like the best masons in the world, and we're building a wall for, I don't know, for some billionaire in his house, we would interlock the blocks in the corner like everyone does everywhere, right? Or if it's cement, you could take cement because cement is pliable and you could make whatever shape you want. But if it's blocks, you're going to interlock the blocks into that corner or do something like that. You know what they did at Ollantaytambo? They curved the stone into the wall. They curved the stone. So they took the stone.
Is there images of that we could look at?
Yeah,
right
you
now?
could pull up stones like that. And they cut the stone so that it curved into the corner. Like, who would do that? That is so intricate. That is so difficult.
And by what technology?
By what technology? But here's the interesting thing. You find the same fingerprints of these builders all over the world. You find the same thing in Egypt. They curved stones. Some of those stones are curved into the corners. And other places where there's megalithic constructions. I mean, these guys, there was like a ubiquitous knowledge of masonry in the world. The fingerprint is everywhere you go. And it's interesting because one of the things I was trying to convince this guide of ours at Machu Picchu this one time was, look, here's a problem. You guys come over to Machu Picchu.
So here it is.
So yeah, that's Sacsayhuaman.
Is that what you're talking about, though?
No.
Curved stone?
No, I'm talking about a stone that's curved. See that there where it says Inca stonework?
In the middle. Yeah,
Yeah,
right
at
there.
Sacsayhuaman, they'll take a large stone. That one looks like it's curved too in the wall, but that's not a very large stone. Sacsayhuaman, they'll take a large stone and they'll curve it into the wall. I don't see Sacsayhuaman in any of those. You have to type. I'm sorry, not Sacsayhuaman. Ollantaytambo. Ollantaytambo.
How do you spell it?
Ollant. Ollant. Aytambo.
OLL.
Ollant.
Yeah, it's not
Ay.
A-N-T.
Tambo.
Never going to guess that.
Whoa.
That's Ollantaytambo. And I'm looking for that curved.
What is the nubs? What are the nubs?
I don't know. There's another fingerprint of this
all over the
architecture
world.
everywhere. No one really knows. I mean, there's a lot of interesting theories out there, but I think at the end of the day, nobody has any idea what the heck those nubs are.
Those things are so spectacular. Look at that
look at the walls.
construction.
Look at the wall right there at Ollantaytambo.
You make that larger,
Look how
please?
exquisite that is.
That's nuts.
I mean, it is just absolutely astonishing.
And the weight of these things.
Yeah.
And the fact that they're carved and placed in a way that would absorb the energy of earthquakes.
Yes, they're anti-seismic.
Yeah.
They're anti-seismic. That's why they do it that way.
Which is
Now, I want you to think
incredible
about this.
technology.
Think about this, okay? So
Just the precision.
you are with Francisco Pizarro. You're a conquistador in the 1533 or 1532 or 1534. I can't remember exactly when he landed. And you're walking through Peru, and you see this. You see this kind of architecture as you're conquering Peru. You overthrow the Inca, and then you go to build, which they did. They overthrew the Inca. The capital city of Cusco, they go to build their cathedrals. They built lots of cathedrals and palaces for themselves, right? So you have the Inca palaces and cathedrals. They took the blocks from Sacsayhuaman. They took the upper layer blocks and they used them to build their cathedral. Okay, there's a couple cathedrals downtown Cusco that were built with the blocks from Sacsayhuaman. They didn't build it like that. They didn't build their cathedrals like that. They took those blocks and they just put them together with mortar like they do in Europe. So here's a question that I always ask people who think that, you know, the Inca were doing that. If you were an architect at that time, why in the world wouldn't you have forced the Inca to teach you that style?
Right.
So that you could build your cathedral. I mean, you would be the greatest architect in the world, right?
Right.
You could build the most magnificent cathedrals in the world in the Cyclopean style if you understood how they did it. So if the Inca were the ones who built it, why didn't they force the Inca to teach them how to build in this style?
Just look at that. That is so crazy.
That's clearly sanded down, right?
Oh,
Well, those are in the
Standing
process.
on
That's
it and they sand it
Ollantaytambo.
down?
That's the Temple of the Sun at the summit.
I'm just it
And-
just looks the faces of it look so smooth.
That's Ollantaytambo, and this was in the process of being constructed at the top when it halted. You can see the blocks there. Those blocks that you're just looking at were in the
something
process
happened.
Yes, those blocks were in the process of being transported, and they were being worked right there. They were being prepped to be incorporated into the walls, and it just halted. And the conventional explanation is that it halted because the Spanish arrived. That's what halted the work. But I think what halted the work was cataclysm, personally. I think that's what halted the work. Something like a Younger Dryas impact.
What's that, Jimmy?
Is that, see, right here, it looks like the face of the wall, you know? Like, it looks like it's all uniform and fits together, right? But if that right here is part of the
there's
wall,
filler in the backing.
then that's like...
Yeah, they have filler in the
this is
backing.
like
Some of
facade.
them... Yeah, some of them, the blocks it's just gigantic blocks. Others, it's like the facade is exquisite and
Like what we have here. Or we
tightly
used to have
fitting.
that brick, you know, that brick in the background used to just be brick at the other studio.
Uh-huh.
Kind of like that.
Right. I know what you're saying. Yeah, but except these are enormous.
Sure. Or, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
Hardened in place and sanded down. Or
So, there was a point of the guy standing. There was a picture of the guy standing in the corner. There was a guy standing in the corner that I was referencing earlier.
Which
You just
one?
had there. It is right there.
Where's
That guy.
no, the one below it.
I don't think you can see the corner very
That
well.
right there, the middle.
You see the guy in the blue standing there.
Yeah, right there.
Behind him, there's this. You can see how the stone below him. It's curved into the corner. That's not a separate stone. It's literally curved into that corner. It's
just so weird.
mind-bending.
The nubs are weird.
They are weird.
And it's weird that they occur all over the world. And it's like, it speaks almost to like, is that how they carried them and placed them? Is that a part of the construction? Is that something about how they made them, that they left these nubs? Like, what are the nubs?
No one has any idea what the nubs are.
That seems so weird that we have no answer to a feature that occurs over and over again in all this megalithic
Everywhere,
architecture.
all over the world.
Yeah. They keep showing these three. They kind of look like the nubs, but they look way different. Than
Yeah,
the
they're a lot
nubs.
rougher.
See those
higher.
Right.
smaller pieces of stone there in between the large blocks? Mm-hmm. That's an anti-seismic property. That's a technology that they use so that the rocks can shift and move and not crumble. It's ingenious. And like I said, you have two different styles here at Ollantaytambo. You have the polygonal, and then you have the interlocking rectangular. Those are two different styles in the same site. That's one of the things that makes Ollantaytambo fascinating. And that rectangular interlocking style comes from Tiwanaku, which is another amazing megalithic site in Bolivia.
What's interesting is when you combine all these sites all over the world and you have all these questions that are very similar. Like how? How did they do this? Why is this stuff the oldest stuff? Why is this stuff the bottom stuff? Why is the base of it the most spectacular construction? And why does it seem like more primitive stuff is on top of that?
Because they like the way it looked.
Right. Yeah. But it's
But
it's the same question over and over again. And the reluctance to propose that perhaps the oldest stuff is more complicated because the civilization was more complex.
that's it.
That's what they're unwilling to.
That's it.
They're unwilling to open up that door, but that door is the only door that makes any sense.
Yeah, not only was the civilization complex, the knowledge was universal. That's a problem.
That
right?
is a problem.
The knowledge was universal.
Because that means you're talking about a seafaring, traveling civilization.
You're talking about something that's a lot more impressive than cavemen, right?
Right.
So,
Especially if this Italian guy is right in terms
Yes.
of his, because 20,000 BC, we're supposed to be just brutes.
oh yeah, cavemen.
Skin
It's
wearing,
Neolithic.
yeah. We're wearing animal skins
Yeah.
and we have spears.
You're a chimpanzee with a better brain.
Yeah.
Back then.
Yeah.
And as I said before, you look at that kind of architecture, and you and I, were we to encounter the Inca, go back in time, in the late 1500s, the Inca are still around. The builders, the alleged builders of these monuments, I mean, they were building Ollantaytambo, right? When you arrived, they quit building. Why did the Spanish architects not incorporate any of that
Right.
into their buildings?
Why did they not learn the techniques?
That's superior technology.
Yeah.
That's anti-seismic. And the point is illustrated because in Cusco they built their cathedrals, right? They knocked down the palaces of the Inca, and they raised the cathedrals in Cusco. And guess what happens? You get a big earthquake, the cathedrals crumble to the ground, except for their megalithic foundations, which remain unmoved. Earthquake comes, cathedrals fall, the walls of Sacsayhuaman stand. And it's happened various times throughout history. What architect would not have taken advantage of that knowledge had it been available to them during the time of the Inca.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, you could build the most magnificent cathedrals on planet Earth, and you could make the Inca build it for you. And now you can say that the Inca would have refused to pass this knowledge on. Okay, maybe. I mean, there was a society within the Inca. You know, they were taught by the grandes almaltas, they called them, who were the great teachers of the Inca nobility and the keepers of the secrets and so forth. The Inca didn't even have a written language. They used quipus. Quipus it's a system of ropes and knots, of string and knots. They didn't even have a written language. So absolutely extraordinary. And nobody can give me an adequate explanation as to why such amazing knowledge is just forgotten. I mean, would we forget how to build computers? No. So why would we just forget how to build megaliths? Why? That's not something you forget. These things don't fall down in earthquakes. That's something you pass on carefully from one generation to the next, unless, like our ancient antecedents tell us, there was a cataclysm that rocked the earth and eliminated the civilizations that were inhabiting the earth. That's, to me, that's the best explanation.
Well, it's certainly the most logical explanation if you weren't attached to a timeline. If you didn't have this timeline that these archaeologists insist upon, then you would say, okay, clearly we know that a cataclysm occurred. Clearly we know the Younger Dryas impact theory is accepted, and especially now. So
becoming more so over time.
More
certainly.
likely,
Yeah.
much more likely that there was something going on that we don't totally understand tens of thousands of years ago.
Yeah. I mean, I think we would do very well to listen, to take serious the myths and legends.
Well, it's also weird that, like, the Aztecs, like, I used to think that the Aztecs created those temples and those pyramids. And then I found out fairly recently that they never even claimed to have.
No.
That they say they found them and that these were the birthplace of the gods.
Yes. See, that's what I was going to say about Machu Picchu. So, you know what the name of Machu Picchu is? It's not Machu Picchu. In Quechua, it's Ijampu. And Ijampu means the abode of the gods, or the dwelling of the gods. This is how they viewed the megaliths. I mean, this is how, if we were primitive people coming upon these megalithic structures, what would we think? The gods must have done this. The gods lived here. And so then we would rebuild. We would re-inhabit the habitation of the gods.
Yeah, why would you live anywhere else if you could live there?
Right. And it would be the nobility.
Dopest architecture you've ever imagined.
Exactly.
It's right there. Why would you let some idiots take it over?
You wouldn't.
Give me that. That's mine.
You wouldn't.
Yeah, of course. You know, there's also the weirdness of Peru, like the Nazca lines. Like, what the hell is all that about?
I don't know. That's a great mystery.
There's a lot of weirdness to Peru.
There's a lot of weirdness in Peru.
And how about those the ancient tapestries that show those three-fingered, three-toed, big-headed people with big eyes? And it's ubiquitous. And these are 1,000 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
then you have the Paracas culture, with those massive, elongated skulls.
Right.
In the Paracas culture, by the way, you know, people see these elongated skulls online. I've been in Paracas a lot. I've done a lot of research down there on the Paracas culture and other things. Made some interesting discoveries, by the way, with our drone, with our GPR unit. But you see these images online, and you think that the Paracas people, their skulls are so large and elongated. You think these must have been big people, right? That's what it looks like. No, they were tiny. They were really little. They were bizarre. The morphology of their body was different than ours.
Tiny with big heads?
Yes. The Paracas people were very small, and they had a proclivity to live in underground. They had subterranean dwellings. And their eye sockets of some of these elongated skulls, the eye sockets are like 25% larger, the orbital socket. So they big eyes, elongated skull, very diminutive people, in some cases living underground.